Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cafe New Canadians. It's where we chat about all the issues that matter to newcomers to Canada. We discuss important topics ranging from employment, settlement, integration, and more. Cafe New Canadians, in this session, we will be talking about the power of negotiation. We'll be learning about how to practice negotiation skills as a newcomer in Canadian workplaces. My name is Shruti Dargan, and I will be moderating this session. And I'm so pleased to welcome three guests who will be joining me today for this chat. I first want to welcome Sweta Regmi. She is a certified career strategist and personal branding consultant. We also will be joined by Clark Glassford, a career strategy and interview coach, and Masha Tarhini, who is right now the executive assistant to the CEO at Trios College. A very warm welcome to all three guests who will be talking with us about the power of negotiation skills. And just before we start diving into the chat with our guests, I want to remind that this conversation is not going to be complete without your questions. So for all the attendees, please type your questions in the Q&A tab on Zoom. And if you're joining us on YouTube, where we're live streaming this, please share your questions in the chat box, and we will bring them up with the guests. So let's get started with a warm welcome to all three guests. We're so happy that you're joining us today to share your insights, experiences, and valuable tips for the audience. Let's start with a round of introductions. Clark, could you please, just share a little bit about yourself, what you do, how you're helping newcomers with your expertise?
Sure. Thanks, Shruti. Clark Glassford. My company is called My Practice Interview. My entire background is in human resources. So I've worked in small organizations, large organizations, doing all HR functions, but a big part of that is recruiting peoples at all levels from all walks of life within those organizations. So my private business now really focuses on helping people achieve career success through interview coaching and resume writing. So I work with people from entry-level jobs right up to senior level director, CEO type positions, help them achieve their goals.
And we're so excited because, when you mentioned resumes and interviews, and of course, through negotiation, there's so much that one can achieve in those stages of the hiring process. Sweta, coming to you next. I know it's somewhat similar experience, but could you tell us about, your firm as well?
Absolutely. I am a founder and CEO at Teach and Do, where we teach and do-it-yourself program, which is completely related with the resume writing, building the personal brand, LinkedIn optimizations, interview coaching. And personally, I was a hiring manager in the corporate world in top banks in Canada. I came as a newcomer so many years ago. I still feel I am one of the newcomers. It's never going to go away. And, I teach clarity to get that six-figure career and personal branding to the immigrants in Canada and newcomers in Canada.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And Masha, last but not least, please, if you could share a little bit about yourself as well.
Hi. First of all, thank you, Shruti, for having me here. And Clark and Sweta, I'm honored to be with you guys today. I read so much about you. I went to all the LinkedIn and stuff. Good job. So I'm a newcomer. I came to Canada in 2022, end of 2022. And hopefully, maybe I'll share a bit with you guys later how I came here. But I come from a background with interior design, and then I did my MBA in project management. And now I'm the CEO, executive assistant to the CEO at Trios College.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, of course, Masha, through your experience as well, you can talk about your newcomer experience, and that's what we aim to do through cafe sessions, when we're able to bring in expert voices, newcomer experiences, and basically knowledge sharing. So let's get started for this topic around negotiation skills with a little bit of an understanding of Canadian workplaces. When newcomers come to Canada, they bring with them a wealth of experience, work experience as well. But the culture is different. And especially when it comes to Canadian workplaces, the communication style could be different. The way things function are quite different. So Sweta, could we get started with you? If you could just share a little bit about what, in terms of communication style, is so different with a Canadian workplace that might be new to newcomers.
Absolutely. Great question there, Shruti. I mean, communication styles, nobody teaches you when you actually go into the workplace. How do you negotiate? And most of us do not even negotiate because let's go back to the labor market in Canada, right? So there's no salary range for posting, and there's no transparency in some kind of industry. So when the newcomers are coming in, they have zero knowledge when it comes to salary range, and they don't know how to even start. So this is where I think the research comes in and outlining what they want, what are the negotiable and what are not the negotiable. And I think let's go back to the market trend and find out the communication would start from right there where you see what in the job descriptions, right? Reporting lines, let's say, what kind of industry you're targeting. Everything comes from the job descriptions, and also company culture matters as well. Some companies, they don't negotiate. Some companies, they welcome that negotiations, right? So we're going to talk about that like overall when it comes to communications, but there's no one strategy to communicate for salary negotiations. It's understanding if the employers are okay with it, and you don't want to be in that role where you are the right candidate, but because of your communication style, maybe you're so direct, it's not diplomatic, you don't know how to negotiate, you don't want to lose that offer. And we've seen that in the market as well. So right company matters, and this is where the resource comes in, and having that information in interviews is the key before starting even negotiating it.
Certainly. And that's great advice to get started with, focused on negotiation. Clark, could I ask you next to share a little more about Canadian workplaces in the context of what is considered appropriate when it comes to, even conversations? Say, because what I'm trying to kind of get at is, as newcomers, we may come from a culture wherein it's what is seen as self-advocacy here could be seen as boasting in other cultures. How
Right.
often do you talk about yourself? Is it I versus the team? Talk a little to us about that as well, please.
Yeah, no, really great question. And it's such a tough one to navigate. Sweta had some really great comments there in terms of using your research on the front end to try and figure out the company, the culture of that company, pay ranges within that organization is really important. But when it comes down to communicating and making that ask for negotiation, it's always kind of err on the side of polite professional, using I instead of team. And what you want to be able to get across to any employer if you're starting that negotiation is first letting them know just how excited you are. You're thrilled about this opportunity. You're thrilled about working with this organization. As an employer, that's what I want to hear. I want to know that you're passionate about working for me, and then start getting into why you're making the ask that you're asking in terms of that negotiation, and backing that up with facts, not just feelings. So feelings being, well, I need to make this amount of money because I have bills and mortgages and things like that. More along the lines of, instead of doing it that way, here's the experience that I bring to this role, and here's why I think my salary expectation should be this. It's polite ask. It's backing it with facts about your background, perhaps about the industry and what the salary ranges are within that industry, and finishing that ask with, again, that I'm excited about this opportunity. I hope there is room to negotiate here. I'm eagerly waiting to hear your response back. So it really grounded in professionalism, excitement, and facts in terms of what you bring to the role that you've applied for.
So what I'm hearing is, ample research to begin with, and communicating about the value that you bring to the table, not being shy in that at all. Because if you wouldn't talk about yourself, then there's no point in expecting, for somebody else to understand your value, and doing that with a lot of technique. Continuing this conversation around Canadian workplaces, Masha, what has your experience been in the years that you've been here, and from your, from back home? What would you want to share? Has there been a difference that you noticed, or was did some things come across as slightly odd in the Canadian culture? Or in my experience, I felt like the processes here are somewhat slower than how they were back in the country I moved from, India.
Well, yeah, first I would like to thank Sweta and Clark. They said something really important regarding how to present yourself on communication. I would like to highlight on that because whoever's watching should really know this and listen to me carefully, because as a newcomer, coming to Canada and having this kind of Canadian experience note, and that point that they ask you about, this kind of gave me a bit of down low when it comes to, okay, then why did I study all those years? I have 8 years of experience, right? And I came here and I'm like, okay, and then what? So this kind of, when you first come to Canada and you hear all that about Canadian experience, you have to do this, you have to study all over again. When coming to negotiating and maybe presenting ourselves, we don't have that kind of confidence to do so, because we think that coming here, it's a different world, it's a different country. What we don't know is that, yeah, it is a different culture, but how? It's a combination of all our cultures together, right? So we should not be afraid of telling them who we are, where we come from. We should be very confident telling whoever we want to work with, or whatever company we're applying to, that, listen, this is who we are and this is what we have. And I'd love to work with you in the company. Just give me a chance. And sometimes those, they would know and appreciate that, like where I'm working right now, right? They really appreciate international people, and they know that we do think outside the box, but it's a matter of self-confidence when we go and we give them what we have, right? So yeah.
Now, while staying on this conversation around negotiation, I wanted to maybe take a step back and say why negotiation in general is an important skill to have in life, in the workplace. Sweta, Clark, who would like to go first?
Clark, do you want to take that on? I'll go second.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, life skills in general, and negotiation skills are so difficult. You learn through doing. And it's one of those that, through practice, it builds confidence, it builds the ability to make that ask, and builds that ability to be okay with a no answer, right? And that's kind of what's rooted at the bottom of all of this, is that for the most part, if you're building your negotiation, you're building your ask through what we've talked about here, that professionalism, being polite, rooting it in facts. The worst you're probably going to hear back from that employer is, no, we cannot meet your salary expectations, or whatever other benefits you're trying to negotiate as part of that job offer. Now, if you're way out in left field and you haven't done your research and you're asking for the moon, you may have them ghost you at the end of the day, or not respond to you, or say, look, sorry, we're going to look for somebody else. So that's why that research is important. But when it comes to negotiation and those important skills, it's because as you start organizations, that's where you start in terms of your pay. And over time, your pay increases, but it increases based on what you negotiate at that front end of your job. And so it's important that if you start at a salary that you're looking for and you make that ask, as long as you're doing it in the right ways we've described here. You practice that in advance of making that ask. You practice on a Zoom meeting like this for one, in front of a mirror, in front of a partner, whoever, and work that confidence so that when you do make the ask, you're feeling comfortable with yourself. You're feeling confident about the way you're approaching it, and you're rooting it in actual reasons as to why that makes sense for them to give you what the counter offer that you're requesting.
There's no doubt that negotiation as a skill is important, but specifically in the context of newcomers, sometimes when, say, someone has been applying for quite a few jobs and it's that one interview that you were able to bag, there's a certain fear. Can I let this go? Will I probably not get this opportunity if I negotiate too much? So just sharing that context, Sweta, maybe if you wanted to kind of explore that also in your answer.
Absolutely. As a newcomer, I hate to say it, sometimes we don't really have our privileges, or you might think that you don't have that negotiation power. The answer is always going to be no if you don't ask, right? Before you do that, you have to have that mindset, I think, where you're thinking negotiation is not about you winning it, them losing it. It's a mutual agreement between you where both parties are going to win it. If you put that strategy on your mindset where I'm going to ask these things and see if they can accommodate that, right? So understanding what is your negotiable is really important. And not everything is negotiable. Again, it depends on type of company, type of industry, type of role you're targeting, and where you are as well, the roles too. On an entry level, there's not much of negotiation power. But if you're qualified, you're on the leadership level, the more high you go, there are a lot of perks there you can negotiate. This is where you got to identify what matters to you and what you can take it on. And you cannot just be on that mindset of, I'm going to negotiate everything. I want what I want. You have to meet somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
You don't have any data to prove it as a newcomer in Canada, right? This is where you can apply if and then strategy, which is like, all right, I'm going to probably start with whatever they gave me. And I feel like I don't have that leverage of negotiations. I feel like it's a fair market value once you establish that research stage. Then you go back and negotiate with the employer, which is future negotiations, where Clark was highlighting once you get there, you get more, right? So then if I do this within 3 months, if I put your stats, let's say customer service satisfactions, change it from 80% to 90% within 3 months, then can you increase the salary by this percent, right? Try to think that, not right now, but later on as well. That's the strategy you can put it as well. I'll leave it as that.
Both of those were really great tips. Masha, I'll come to you. And, you spoke earlier about the wealth of experience that you arrived with in Canada. And so tell us about a little bit of your journey, your professional journey of, getting your first job. Even if negotiation was not something that happened right at the first one, probably how is it that you were able to showcase that value? Because it all starts with talking about yourself.
Yeah, here Sweta did say something that it took me back to when I first applied for the job. So yeah, as a newcomer, I would tell you I did not have, as confident as I am, I did not have the confidence to negotiate at first. You just want this job, you just want to start a job, whatever it is, not knowing even what the culture of the company that you're applying sometimes to. Like you can see something online, but it doesn't mean that it is actually what it is, right? So, but I don't know. I was lucky, I would say. Before even me thinking, like in my mind, I did have this mindset that when I start working, when they see what I can do and what I can perform and how I do it, then I'll ask to be promoted. They were faster than me, so my manager was really nice, to be very honest. He did. I remember that day, it was like I was waiting for like until I'm done with my probation, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to him and I'm gonna tell him that if I do this, this and that, and I've been changing a lot and using my own strategical planning kind of things to do stuff, will he give me a chance to tell me how I can grow in the company? And to my surprise, he's the one who called me in, and he's like, oh, what do you think of this, this, and that? And where do you see yourself in 5 years? Not as an interview question, but as someone who actually cares. Now, again, I was lucky with the company, but I would say as a newcomer to anyone that is applying, like you don't have to lose hope from first, even if you can't negotiate the first job, right? But as Sweta said, and Clark, after you show them who you really are, from that first job, a couple of months after you're done, I'm sure that first of all, you'll be seen. What's nice about Canada, I've realized, I've met a lot of people and I've seen that it's not like back home. You struggle to get promoted. Here, your hard work is actually seen. It's recognized in most places. And you just need 3, 4, let's say 6 months. Don't lose hope. After those 6 months, you'll have the power to negotiate, right? You already have that on the paper that you started working in Canada, and then you can use Clark's advice and Sweta and just run into a new job. I would say that.
Now let's dive deeper into, so far we've of course established negotiation is important as a skill and how to kind of navigate the beginning. But it can also happen at various stages in the hiring process. It all starts with self-advocacy in the interview stage, but when you're closer to, getting an offer letter is when the real negotiation begins within that first job search. And then, of course, you have major points when it comes to promotion, reviews, and so on. Clark, if you could take us through, what I said was just a very brief way, but if you could shed some light on what typically the hiring process looks like and some ways that one can negotiate salary to begin with, and we'll get to the other benefits later in the session.
Yeah, so from a recruiter and from a leading HR team, so I'm very familiar with this process. So, you know, employers they'll start the interview process, they'll vet resumes, they'll call you in for an interview. A lot of the time they'll ask you what your salary expectations are. You can provide a range. That's one way to provide your salary expectations when asked that question. You may have seen it on the posting, on the job postings. You may say, yes, that fits within my range. You may turn that around into a question to them to say, well, what is the salary range for this position if you're not comfortable giving a specific number? So typically you might hear that at the early stages of the interview, they'll ask you, or at the end of the interview, they'll ask you what your salary range is. At that point of the interview, that's not your point to start a negotiation with the employer. You've just met that hiring manager, that recruiter. You're having a conversation. They're assessing you whether you have the skills for that role. You're assessing them whether it's the right fit for you. And it's not the time to get into a negotiation. You want to leave that to further in the process, which is, you know, after you've done interviews, after perhaps reference checks have been completed, or security checks, or whatever their other stages are in their recruitment process. You want to be in a position where they're ready to present you with an offer, or they have presented you with an offer, which will list what that salary is. At that point, that's the time when you can come back with a counter offer, and you want to use that to your advantage. It's a bit of leverage that you have, and I say it with clients all the time. Us employers, typically when we're making an offer to you, we don't actually have a plan B. There's no second or third person that if you decline the offer, we're going to go and get this other person who's kind of waiting. A lot of the time, you're the one person, we really want you. So at that point, you do have a little bit of leverage, because as an employer, I don't want to lose you. So going back to what we talked about earlier with your research and how you're asking questions and coming up with a number and presenting it to the employer. So that's where you start that negotiation. Hopefully you're able to make some moves on your salary that way. I love what Masha said here on, once you've started with that employer, then there are stages. So there are stages such as your probationary period. Once you're through those 3, 6, 9 months, whatever the probationary period is, that may be a time you can go back to that employer and ask for additional money. You may have annual performance reviews. So during that annual performance review, that may be another opportunity to further negotiate salary. You may be locked into an employer's compensation system, which means there are periods of time where your salary increases. So for example, if you're in a unionized type role, your salary will increase at very specific times, typically annually on your anniversary date, or through collective bargaining on a specific date, your salary will increase. So you may not have room to negotiate there. So it's getting in, understanding the employer's culture, understanding through asking questions when you get there, what are the appropriate times to make those asks, and using that to your advantage as you go through. It's also, like Masha said, understanding that it's your first step, right? So for some of you, this is your first step, your first job in Canada. It's that foot in the door. You're just getting that first Canadian experience. So it's that short-term gain at that salary, but then you're kind of mapping out strategically yourself. Okay, in 6 months of my probationary review, I'll renegotiate. I'll look to renegotiate, or I'll look, now that I've got that experience, to move on to another job where I can gain the salary that I feel is worthy of the experience I have. So I'll leave it there, but there's so much I could talk about on that.
And we'll be discussing that. Yeah. Sweta, I wanted you to go next, but there's a question that I wanted to also ask. It's often something I've encountered that personally, a few friends have, at different points, because each job could be different, each application process could look slightly different from the other, right? Sometimes in the application process itself, you're supposed to put in a range or a number. Now, and that is way before you are even called in for an interview. What do you do in that stage? What's the kind of number that you should go with? What's a specific range that one should go with? And I'm asking that because both of you also have recruiting experience, and you've been on the other side to know what HRs and recruiters are expecting, and what is that range that they can play with. And then say if you didn't really get it right in that block, but after the interview process, that thought has changed for you. How do you navigate that as well?
Yeah, that's such a great question, right? I wish I could say this is the range you should be putting it on. This is where I think you go back to the research and find out how much is it that it's your negotiable. So the way that I would see it would be when you know how much are you worth and how much is the amount that you want, that should go there, right? The highest amount that you want, that should go there. And these are sometimes that could be used as a knockout questions. Usually that's a part of knockout questions. If employers really want to weed you out from the system and they're like, you know what, they're too high, we cannot pay them, and they have a range already. And that's a tricky question. So this is where I would probably go around and ask inside the organizations or find out the informations on salary.com, Glassdoor, and everything like that. And you should already know where you fall in, right?
Yeah.
And let's say in the event, second part of your question is in the event that you feel like, oh my God, you know what, it was too low for me. That's okay if you get invited. There's a reason you got invited, right? And I think I teach the strategy called rich model for salary negotiations, and within the clarity where salary negotiation does not start when you get the job offer. It starts right at the beginning when you do the research, understanding the labor trends and market, which is researching it, identifying your skills inventory, which is hard skills and soft skills that's needed in Canada as a newcomer, transferable skills from back home, understanding the company's policy around compensations, that's called total compensation package, and finding out that range and having that history to support the data where you feel like I need to be supported with this amount of money, right? So sometimes you don't really have to negotiate. You would have so much good offer because you've done it right from the start, which is your resume speaks the volume of it. They could not wait for you to come in for interview because you're so good at it. It lists out all the tools that the Canadian employer wants, and they want you so bad that they're going to give you the top dollar. So you always ask one question when it comes to ranges, because we've identified, because there's a transparency in salary right now, and you must have seen that employers are disclosing large range, wacky range out there, right? I want my client to ask all the time, again, to the Clark's point, what is your salary expectation? Put it back to them if you're not clear on it. What is your range? What is the top total compensation package? Because it's not only about money, it's about so many perks that it adds up to like 6-figure later one, right? We don't disregard that, right? Don't be stuck in salary only. And then ask, who gets the top range? How do I get there? Is it the tools? Is it the certification? Is it something that I can back it up when it comes with the negotiations? Then boom, they want what they want. If you're a project manager and if you're applying for the role where PMP is not must have, and it's, assets, and that's probably negotiable later on if you have PMP already. I had a client who made into Deloitte. PMP was not must have. She made a 6-figure newcomer in Canada, first job in Canada, Pakistani girl, right? No Canadian experience, right? Top dollar, no negotiation needed, right? The other one guy, Rajesh, was featured in magazine as well, Immigrant as well, magazine as well. Top dollar, no negotiation, because he did what he could on a resume itself, and he was blown away. I said, are you going to negotiate, Rajesh? Like, no, they gave me the top amount, but I still went ahead and told him, let's go negotiate. Just ask, is it negotiable? Don't take that, ask. And they said, you know what, we gave you the top dollar because exactly the talent we were looking for. Where were you? Cannot wait. He got it. So sometimes it's okay to not negotiate, right? But understand the process. Always ask, is it negotiable? Because recruiters know the culture. Don't miss that opportunity to ask the question.
Mm-hmm. Now, just continuing that thought again, Masha, I wanted to learn from your experience. You're someone who is a newcomer yourself, but I know you have the passion to help other newcomers with sharing your personal experiences and advice. What was your experience with when navigating your first contract? Was this somewhere a conversation, what Clark and Sweta just shared about that persuasion, having those conversations, bringing up, say, a certain figure, or talking about the skills, because you're someone who also has a lot of experience and a lot of skill set that you brought with, but that may not be the job responsibility of the first job that you had. So how did you navigate that?
So, as I said before, it was the first job. I did not know the culture, did not know anything. Now I did have like university experience. I did work at a university back home while I was studying. So I did take that with me to that new job because I applied at first as a program administrator for the college. Now, when I talked, I wouldn't say, I don't know if I'm not, maybe I'm not allowed to say what was the actual salary, but they did
Yes,
increase
let's keep
without
that
me
out,
even
but
saying.
if you could just share, yeah.
Yeah. They just because when like first they saw my resume, right? But resume is not everything. Like I do tell my whoever I'm helping now, when I mentor someone, I'm like when people see you, when people see your personality and see how confident you are with what you've done, this might be a game changer, right? So when I went and did my interview, my manager who was interviewing me back then, he himself actually, so whatever was written as the salary, he gave me more. He offered more. So I didn't think I didn't think I had the chance to negotiate, to be very honest. Like it's just that the fact that I went in, I always had this thing that my parents would tell me, just go in, show your confidence, and I'm sure it's gonna be their loss if they don't they don't hire you. So going into with this mindset, um, like Sweta said, when they see that they want you, you're the one, they're gonna give you everything that whatever the maximum amount that they put for that position, they're gonna give it to you, right? But it's how you present yourself as well. It's not only the resume, I would say. That's from my experience.
Yeah. But outside of the salary and the range and so on, how were you able to advocate for your skills and the desired role and responsibilities that you were hired for?
So, I think, Sweta, you said you were an immigrant. So back home, I always say that working outside the box and thinking outside the box and not only doing the things you're asked to do is something we usually do on a daily basis to be able to survive in our countries. So that's not something new for us, right? So with like instead of negotiating, what I did is I wouldn't like, okay, I was trained how to do my job, right? But I always thought of things from what I learned from my previous jobs and from what I did back home to introduce new things to my role. And I would just like pick on everyone just to ask them if they need help. And like I'd see someone stuck on something and I just go and be like, how about you do it this way? Now, here, because I would say those, if you bring from different cultures, a lot of things would be something new and something, oh wow, this is new because it is, right? If you go from Canada and you go down now to whatever country other than North America, if you say, I don't know, we eat poutine, right? It's something new to them. So I would say it's the same kind of thing. So showcasing what you have, do not limit yourself to what the job is giving you, but think and act outside the box. Don't only think outside the box. I think that showcases what you are able to, and that alone is a negotiation. I would go back to because the management would see what you're doing and they'd be like, okay, listen, this person we should put her in that position or in that department because she fits all that, even though that did not showcase in her resume or she did not have the experience before. But look at her now; she was able to fit into our culture, our company, everything. So how about we take her because they wouldn't want to lose you. So they'll stick to you so you would grow with them, right? Because I know like I've watched a lot of I would say presentations and people talk shows that it's plus it's cheaper for a company to keep you rather than you go lose you and then train another one, right? So imagine they're training you. And Clark said something in the beginning that he would love, like as a company owner, let's say he'd love to see their employees are really happy and they're happy in that job, right? Because this is good for the company. So when you show that, they're not going to lose you because you're happy and they're happy with you. So why not grow in the same company? I think
But what
that's
I'm also hearing is, that confidence, that kind of communicating your value, showcasing the benefit, showcasing what you can bring to the table, even as you grow into the role. It all starts early and then in some ways kind of accumulates and become your negotiation
true.
too,
Yes.
when you have the opportunity, even if you
Yes,
didn't
true.
have that early on. Now, before we move on to, because, as I said earlier, salary is just one of the components that can be negotiated when it comes to the job search process, the interview stage. There are also other benefits. But before we move on, Clark and Sweta, is there any other advice related to salary in terms of a strategy, a tip that you would like to share? Clark, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, the one piece I'd want to say here is just from a strategy point of view and thinking about it from an employer's perspective. So Sweta talked about a client of hers that, because they had presented themselves and the way they presented themselves, they were offered the top salary. I loved how it was still, well, go back and ask, is there room to negotiate? You don't know unless you ask. And sounded like they politely asked, and they were already at the top because they had done everything they need to do to showcase their skills for that role. However, as an employer, you got to remember we're still negotiating as well. So one of an employer's strategy is, I may not offer at the top of that salary range because I'm expecting that the applicant will come back with a counter offer. So I leave myself a little bit of room so that if that applicant comes back with a counter offer, I have room to move on that salary scale versus having to come back and say, look, I'm sorry, you're at the top of the range. There's nothing I can do. So as a negotiating point of view, I give myself a bit of room as an employer so I can work with that applicant to help them achieve what they want to achieve. But here's the key thing is, as that's built into my negotiating process, so few applicants will actually
come back and ask
and will actually negotiate. And I'm prepared to negotiate every time, but they won't come back and ask. So a key thing for all the listeners out there listening to this is that a lot of the time employers leave a little bit of space to negotiate. So always make that ask. And if the answer is no, the answer is no. At that point, you haven't lost anything. It's up to you to make a decision as to whether you want to stay with that employer or keep looking for a different role. But at least you've made the ask and you know what the employer's position is.
All right. And, as we mentioned earlier, this could vary. These cases could vary based on what industry you're getting hired in, what kind of a contract you have, whether it's permanent full-time, is it part-time, is it a specific period contract? Sweta, could you share some more details about, just with the salary, is there any other additional information that you'd like to share? And maybe some key insights on how employers like to deal with the situation, maybe some revelations for the viewers as well, or how they can be prepared.
Yes, as a hiring manager, we're given the ranges, right? So I would see what would the high range look like when I'm comparing my team. Then I'm going to look at it, who's the highest one and why they're the highest one. Now, that does not necessarily mean that that was a top performer. Maybe the person was there for 10 years and every year they got the performance review, and due to that, there was salary increase plus the inflation match and everything like that. So I need to understand first why they are top, right? And there's a range, lowest one, and it all depends on what do they bring in. So for example, when I was hiring, I was given the budget, and for my associate, I was thinking, okay, if they have these tools, I'm going to put them here. If they have everything I'm looking for, which is the hard skills and tools they have, so it minimizes the training, and they already have the contact center experience, so I don't really have to teach them from the ground up. So these are the things I'm looking for from the hiring manager perspective. And if I want to go and give them the range that I feel like they don't have everything, I have to get an approval from somewhere, which would be my manager. So this is where the resource comes in. Is it manager controlling that range? Do I have that much power when you negotiate, right? All the recruiters are doing is hearing you out. You're building the case. The recruiter is not building the case for you. You're going to go back to the talent acquisition team. If it's from internal company, you're going to give them, this is what I'm looking for. Can you meet somewhere else in between? What are your thoughts on it? Is it negotiable? I'm open, right? And then it could be vacations. And you don't want to negotiate benefit because that gets tricky, because that comes with, okay, the human rights issues and everything like that as well. So vacations, instead of 3 weeks, can I get 4 weeks? And there's a sign back bonus, and you have to literally put that on place why you need that. You can't just go like, I need 40% sign back, right? Okay, well, if I leave the other job, then my bonus is due and my performance review is due, and I'm a high performer, and at least I'm going to get 30,000 bonus in there. And either you wait, I'm eager and excited, either I start later, or can you match that for me? And that's a case that you're building with a recruiter, and then recruiter is going to go back, hey, we got the guy, but you know what? This is what's happening. Can we match it up? That's a case, and they're going to talk and do that. And even if the manager can't do that, they're going to go to their boss and then say, I need this person. Let's make a case, right? You need the case. Again, to Carl's point, it's not about feeling. It's about data, why you're negotiating it as well, right? Do you have a skills? Do you have tools? Do you have a certifications? What else do you want? I got everything. Why are we not moving ahead with the process? So hiring managers has a budget, but you have to understand who controls it. I could only control 20% increase. Anything over that, it had to go with the HR and the senior director. So you need to understand, right? How do you negotiate with the manager so manager can make a case for you and negotiate on behalf of you? That's your job to negotiate and find the data. And that goes back again is, if you want to be rich, you better identify your niche. That's it.
I'll stay with you for the next question. And just before that, I would encourage viewers, if you have any specific situations you encountered in your job search processes, bring up those situations for our guests to answer. It could be a question that you were asked. It could be a problem that you don't still have the answer to. Sweta, I wanted to also discuss the other benefits, outside of just salary. As a newcomer, someone told me in certain companies, there's also an option to negotiate vacation time, because some companies might just have like a 3-week or a 4-week policy, but probably as a newcomer, or for people who've moved as immigrants from outside of Canada, there is that as a requirement that you'd probably be visiting your family, and that might be something that is more dear to you than, say, some added salary. So what other benefits, maybe say vacation time or other benefits, can you share with us that can be negotiated?
Yes. So again, like when it comes to benefit, in my with the industry that I was in, obviously, when it depends on what kind of role, right? What kind of role you're targeting. If you're into the entry level role where there's a high turnover and it's not 6-figure salary, let's say, right? It's going to be very tricky for you to make that case on it because they're hiring in the batches. There's a lot of retention going on. So negotiating the vacations would be something that I would ask first. The question is always about, it's not about, I want this, the policy. If they're not going to move the needle because of discrimination factor, right? Like, everyone gets 3 weeks and the vacations would be based on the tenure. And then every year you get 2 more, 3 more. They have a policy built in already. You can break your head against it. You're not going to get it. You're going to lose the offer, right? So you have to understand by talking to the recruiter and talent acquisitions, can you tell me what's negotiable on it? Like what part is negotiable? Benefits, what kind of benefits are negotiable? So let's say toll. You drive and you have to drive all the time and you are the one who's going to do the toll road, right? Is that negotiable, right? Car mileage. If you have to travel a lot from work, meeting the clients, vendors and everything like that, is your mileage negotiable, right? Can you get reimbursed for the car? Things like that. And again, these are all depending on what kind of role that you are actually applying for. The other one is when you go away on vacation, there's a stipend. Do you get paid for work travel, which is overnight pay? Is that into the total compensation package? Is it the exception basis? Help me understand more. So it's all about understanding if you're traveling a lot and that's a lot of money outside work hour. Do you get built into the vacation days, right? The strategy would be, it's not about I want vacation. It's like, what happens if I'm traveling a lot after hours? Is that part of vacation? Can I tag along? Now, leadership role, they don't work hourly, right? You can work 10 hours a day or 8 hours a day, doesn't matter. You're not going to get, extra time for staying late or traveling. This is where you got to negotiate how much travel time, how much work hour, how much, if you have a vendors outside of Canada, right? Things like that matters. So understanding what's negotiable for you, which is if vacation is important for you, OT time, negotiate, but understand it. A lot of OT, all right. what can I add on to it, right? Things like that. So understanding, again, going back to the research. And I'm going to keep on repeating myself. I might sound like a broken
I'd
record.
also love to hear Clark's opinion on, that. But just before that, that reminded me of, when you mentioned car. Masha, I had a conversation with you earlier wherein you shared, that came up in your uh, somewhat conversation around your role as well. Would you like to share a little bit about, how you handled in your negotiation conversation?
Well, whenever you come back to me with negotiation, I just know I just realize where I work is heaven for me now. So they actually gave me like when like Sweta said something about mileage and all that. They actually do when I started so before the role that I was in, I didn't need all that, right? But when I moved to the new role, they gave me all that. And I sometimes I just want to add to, I know Clark and Sweta are like professionals, but as someone who experienced it, sometimes negotiation is about happiness, I would say, at work. Like for me, I literally, and I like I tell everyone, I did not ever imagine in my life that I will wake up with all the stress that I have at work, with all the the times that I work and all the tasks that I have, that I will wake up happy to go to work. I do not mind working. If I work overtime, I do not say anything because this is me. Like I love finishing tasks on time, let's say. And this is a very important thing. Like I would say this would be negotiable maybe after a couple of months when you're working at work. Like you might not like the environment a lot. Maybe then you'll ask for additional vacation days. But for me, like yeah, I think they negotiated right. They do have an amazing environment at work, a very, very nice environment. There's no hierarchy, all that what I heard about Canada that's represented where I work. So I think that was the best non-negotiable and negotiable from their side. Like you're happy, we give you this. Do you like it? And I actually do, because mental health is the most important thing right now for me. And I think for everyone it should be, because working for figures is not always the solution. You might have the I don't know, 7, 8, 9 figures, but you wake up not happy. And that's not what I'm looking for. And I hope no one is looking for that.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of viewers that would resonate with a lot of viewers, because as newcomers, there is that there's so many things that one deals with. Clark, would you share some tips to the benefits that Sweta mentioned earlier? Any that you want to add, and also how one can navigate that? Very briefly, if you could share some key tips with us and the viewers.
Yeah, I think between Masha and Sweta, they've talked a lot about it, not just the figure, it's the total compensation. Like,
Yes.
So that's a really important piece here for people to understand, is that there's your salary, then there's total compensation. And depending on what that employer is offering, that total compensation can be 20%, a cost of 20% of your overall salary. It could be upwards of 30% of your overall salary mixed in there, depending on what they're offering. So when you're negotiating, yes, salary is of course the very first thing you're looking at, but also you have a list of things that you need in your life for whatever your personal reasons are for your work-life balance. And it's important for you to have put some thought into that before you've applied, like Sweta was saying. So you're very clear that when you get to that offer stage, well, money's one piece, but here's some other things that I need. I need a minimum of, say, 3 weeks vacation. I need, flexible work hours. I'm looking for a hybrid type job. And those are key pieces that are really, really important. Now, there may be some offsets, right? So the employer may say, look, we're not going to give you 3 weeks, we're going to give you 4 weeks, but your salary is going to be slightly less. Well, that 4 weeks may be enticing to you, and you go, you know what, I'm willing to accept a little lower salary, but now I get 4 weeks vacation. Or they're giving me certain allowances, travel allowances, or they're allowing me to work hybrid, or I can start a little later so I can avoid rush hour and I can drop my kids off at school. Those things are key things where originally everyone just thinks it's money, but there are other things that are a little bit more enticing than money when it comes to that whole work-life balance consideration. So when you're thinking about negotiating and the other things outside of salary, it's all of what Sweta's talked about, what Masha's talked about in terms of that corporate culture, being super excited to wake up in the morning with the stress that you get from going to work, but enjoying that work environment and all the little add-ons that come with that employment offer. And so trying to itemize those and put like a personal cost to what that means to you, and whether all of that combined makes sense for you to go, yeah, that's exactly what I want. Or maybe I can ask, is this position, for example, could this be hybrid? Could I start a little bit later for these reasons? And so again, that's negotiating for those pieces there. And should you get those, that may make a world of difference to you and the ability to accept that job offer.
I got 2 points that I wanted to really stress about it. A lot of newcomers do not know this. So, relocation package, right? So when they come in Canada, they're landing somewhere else, let's say Vancouver, and they're open to Toronto. And if that's really important for you to relocate and you are in demand and you have a niche job and employer loves it, put it out there, relocation as well, right? The dollar amount. And there are employers, they're gonna do that for you if you build a case on it, if it's not a remote environment. Also, they will put the clawback later on. You have to be with them for 3 years or whatever it is, right? Just be very, see it, if they can waive it, stuff like that. Those are the things really matters when you're especially climbing up on the ladder, leadership role. They're happy to do that for you, right? And the other thing that people miss it is when you're starting, I always tell my client to ask, when is the next performance review coming in? So a lot of employers, when you get hired, maybe the performance review for a whole entire company would be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, right? Then what happens is, because you're just there for 3 months or 6 months, they're not probably going to use your key performance indicator where you're measured, because they're like, it's not fair that I measure that and I give you the performance review rating, because that could impact the salary. And they might weed you out saying that you are not due yet because we don't have enough stat and you're not going to get the salary increase, you just got hired. This is where your negotiation strategy comes in. Hey, I get it. When is the new review coming up, right? And they're like, 3, if and then strategy. Okay, after 3 months, if I give you this, I would like you to measure my performance. I'm going to blow you out, right, with my numbers because I'm so confident. I'm feeling inside, right? But I'm not going to tell you. But can we review the performance and go meet that salary increase somewhere else later on? Like the future negotiation, put it out there and document it if they're okay with that. And even when you go there and if they feel like you don't have a stat, put it out there, performance review, right? I've done this. Is there a room for, more on it? And it could be personal development courses as well. That matters on total compensation package, how much you get. If you're a project manager and the next step is PMP, why not? Because you probably get promoted later on. Can they actually do that for you, right? There are a lot of companies, they really seriously treat employees with, we want the next promotions to go to this person if they have these kind of certifications. So this is where the research comes in. Ask those questions. What's $1 for personal development? What am I allowed to do that as well? These are all the research stays again. And these are negotiable for you if you do it the right way.
Thank you for sharing that. There's another conversation I wanted to have around, we've discussed salaries, we've discussed benefits, but one's expectations are not always met. So how do you navigate counter offers? How do you navigate objections or just a complete straight no, that, those negotiations cannot be met with any kind of positive answer? Clark, what would your tips be or advice for viewers when they reach that dead end?
I think it's being clear with yourself as to what your expectations are from the very beginning, before you started to apply to jobs, and understanding here's what I have to have, here's what's nice to have. And if I can get to here, then I'm going to be pretty happy with that offer. And you look at the nice to haves in terms of negotiation, whether that's extra salary, extra benefits. If that offer falls below what your expectations are, what you feel you're worth, what you need personally in your life, or whatever your personal reasons are, then you've made the ask, you've done it professionally. If the answer comes back as no, then there's not much more room you can move there. So it's either accepting the offer, because that's something you're willing to accept, or not accepting the offer. And by not accepting the offer, you're not you may be personally inside upset about that because you've gone through all these steps to get to that point, but doing it professionally, doing it politely, and just say, sorry, unfortunately, that this just doesn't meet my expectations. Thank you for your time. I wish you all the success in the world in finding somebody for this role. That may trigger them to reconsider or not. They have their own internal systems where, you know, they have to have, they can only do so much with salary and benefits and room they have to negotiate, or they may be able to go back and say, okay, look, we don't want to lose this individual. What can we do?
They've also invested their time in the process
They've
up till
invested
this point.
a ton of time. And most employers do not like investing a whole ton of time to see someone walk away at the very end. It's very frustrating for them. So never close the door. And by that, what I mean is don't leave angry. Don't leave with a terse email or a terse conversation, angry conversation with that employer, that hiring manager or recruiter. Be professional about it, because you never know what may come in the future. And always keep that door open to further conversations.
Yeah, I would add one more to the list. Don't vent about it on LinkedIn soon after.
Do not do that.
And, yeah, that could also be damaging.
Tag the company, a recruiter too.
Sweta, I wanted to also very, very briefly touch upon, you know, that fine line that divides negotiating and being greedy. Because at some point it could come across to the recruiter, to the hiring manager, that you just have a long list as a candidate of, okay, what if this isn't met, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll talk about this next. Is there a tip or like a major don't or a do that you would want to highlight here?
Yes, and that's a great question, right? There's a fine line between how much is too much. And I think when you reject the offer, there is something that was missed during the process. That should have never happened, right? And if employer knew your salary expectation, we've always asked, as a hiring manager, our talent acquisition teams are supposed to ask when they do the phone screening, first would be, what are you expecting? Salary expectation. This is where it meets the expectation, and they're putting it down. They're putting it down. It's all documented, right? Everything goes in the ATS system, from like you applying for it to the top company. Everything is recorded there. Recruiters are putting it down. And you said this much is the salary expectations, and you just go back and say, I want 30,000 more. Then you got to build a case why. You got to go back again, right? And if they go like, you know what, we have a policy of this is it. That's a policy. You cannot break your head. That's a policy. They're not going to move in. That happens in the unionized sector because they have a collective, bargaining. It needs to be fair. There's a different way to actually go the salary increase every year. And if they give you, we can't do it because you have that, that's perfect. One of the client, they want one of the top companies. We knew that when she goes in there, there's one tool she was not, experienced on it, which is ServiceNow. And I knew it. They're going to come back and say, even though they paid her 6-figure plus bonus and she negotiated, she's like, you know what? We can't give you that. You're already on top. And the other reason we cannot justify it because you don't know ServiceNow. Right? So they will always give you the reason we can't do it. And that's a skill gap for you. You can always get it more later on. So this is where it should have never happened, to reject the offer because A, you are not clear. B, employer did not do their job. Third is they're probably expecting you to lowball you, which does not really happen in a lot of companies because there's going to be pay gap. They cannot start you with the lower range than they already have. I cannot do that as a hiring manager. If I'm paying 80,000 plus, I cannot start you at 70,000 because you're new in Canada. A lot of people think that that is it, but if you work with the companies who have a policy and process, they can never do that, right? So this is where I think being greedy is not knowing what you want. And negotiations, I don't listen to the influencer on LinkedIn who says everything is negotiable. No, it's not. This is where you got to pick your battle. What's negotiable for you? Start from the salary. And as Clark said, if you want 4 weeks, offset, employer's going to come back. We'll give you this with this. They all know. They've done this. Offsetting it. Where can you offset that, right? Vacation, salary, money, OT, flexible hours, relocations. What's negotiable? Don't be too greedy. You're right.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I haven't forgotten about you, Masha. I wanted to come to you next to talk about, again, briefly, because we're now close to ending the session, but I wanted to also learn from you whether it's a plan that you have in place for growing your career from here on, because as we discussed earlier, negotiation isn't just about salary during the job search process or the hiring process. It's also a continuous process in many ways for career growth, for professional development. So if you'd like to share 1 or 2 tips from your plans for your own career and, advice that you have in general for the viewers.
Sure. Well, I think Clark and Sweta both, they're mentioning everything I want to say, but they're
Something that you'd like to echo then.
Yeah, something, they, as both said, because I want to highlight this, that yeah, again, it's not not everything is negotiable, and you can't negotiate everything, but like for me, I knew what I wanted to do when I started taking they started investing, the company started investing in me in courses and certificates. And, once you start, since I started not the position that I originally wanted, right? There was not, but, when you start working, it's a chance. Even I want to tell everyone, like newcomers, even if it's not the position that you want, if you like the company, if you like the environment, if you like it all, just go in. And during that time, while you're working, you have the chance to, let's say, experience and discover and study all other departments, I would say. And by then, it's an easy open book for you to decide where do you want to go next, right? So for me, when I was when I took the position of the executive assistant, I now imagine, like, I've been working for 8 years now. That's the 9th. With all my degrees, I was still lost from what I wanted to do. Like, yeah, I did study in university. I did do my MBA because I didn't know what I wanted. Because back home, if you don't finish your university, that's not a good idea. If you go into that major, that's not a good idea, right? You have this peer pressure.
But I
plus
love the tip that you
culture.
shared earlier about the company still, because even
What
if,
do you-
back
Yeah.
home things were slightly different, it's here when you're moving into the career
That's what
and
I'm telling you.
establishing your career in
Yeah,
Canada.
that's what I'm telling.
Yeah.
So here it's like they helped me with all those courses with like how I went along with it, like met everyone, right? Different places, all the departments. And I then realized I literally now know what I wanted to do, right? So working with whoever, like my manager now, he gives me also like tasks. And he would ask me which one is easier for you to do, if there is something I would help. And the amount that I'm learning right now, I never knew I'd ever learn that, right? So again, just a small advice. I know time is up, but do not lose hope if you don't find the position that you want, because if you really like the company and you research about the company and you think you will be a right fit, it might take a bit of time, but go in. It would be a chance for you to explore what you want, because you might initially want something, but when you go in and you explore other things, you might just change your mind and be like, you know what, thank God I just started here, because I don't want to go into that path. I want to go that path. So
That's
yeah.
a great tip. Thank you, Masha. And not just Masha, thank you, Sweta, thank you, Clark. We've come to the end of this session. It was so wonderful speaking with all 3 of you, hearing your insights, the valuable tips that you had from your own experience, Masha and Sweta and Clark, as recruiters, hiring managers, as people who are coaching newcomers and other clients. Thank you so much for your time in talking to us about the power of negotiation skills for this session of Cafe New Canadians. Just for the viewers, you can learn about Teach and Do and my practice interview that Clark and Sweta mentioned earlier. You can also connect with them via LinkedIn and learn more about these initiatives and get more practical advice from them. This Cafe New Canadians session was brought to you by New Canadians TV Network. You can watch us on television. We also have lots of resources on our YouTube channel as well as on our website. And for you to stay connected with us, the other opportunities would be connect with us on social media, and you can subscribe to our newsletter as well. Just like Cafe New Canadians, we have lots of other resources for you across these platforms. And we hope to engage with you again soon in another session. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. All the best.